But it's almost South Africa. You know what? Now, I'm struggling to speak English, and the only reason why that's even the case is because grandshap mina nkuluma namadota abantu abamnyama. Ke bua le bo auti ba mo black guys. Nya ya hle. Ke banna ba batho ba bantsho ba ntse ba le busy ka nyoko ena, so ke feel nkare le Jacob van der Merwe, he doesn't need to hear me at this point. Hey, Jacob Thomas, it does not need to hear me at this point. Le motho go go America at this point, ke feel nkare ka bloma lo dula go di beach reng as a spectator, a sa nkutlwisise hore ke reng, because this does not even apply to him. Ke bua ka nyoko ena ya secret society e tletseng ka banna ba batho ba bantsho ba mo South Africa. Lona lo nkutla hantle fela je, you don't need an interpreter, neither do you need the captions tsa CapCut. Ga le di tlhoke, le tsweletseng, le tsheriane, le di boku, ene le bolaya basadi ba mo Mzansi. Ha ka ta mo be le tlo ba pretender hore lona le stand for against gender-based violence. You are exhausted with all of this violence against women when you have commenced it. Ke lona le thomileng di-deng, ke lona le boleleng di-cherry, ke lona grandshap le ntseng gore di-cherry tswetseleng. Basadi ba ha bana maitseo jeka ba sena maitseo right now because of you. So jaka ha ke bua ka Setswana ka kagakana, it is only because le lang tlhaloganya. The only audience that matters right now gore ba nkutlwe ke lona dintswatowe, ke lona le body le tsheriane le sense South Africa. So ke a le ka nkutlwisitsa because ke feel nkare ga go bua ka Setswana ka segoa sorry ga le tlhaloganya. Gentrification ga e bereke se ke la bona kae le sangomanyana le repenta because le goa le moduditse gore bathong this is wrong. How about you stop it in the name of Jesus? You're so stubborn, you don't listen to basic rebuke in all different kinds of earth's languages. So ke a le ka tumpwa jaka mme wa lona le shapa ka mvugo ka thupa because ona mongwana wa motho montsho tlo tsamayang ko government nga rena mme wa ka has infringed my rights untumpile ka branch ya ko sefateng gore ka le banda tshwantse lo chikiwa nkare le bana because that's what you are. That's what kids do. Like, have you ever taken your eyes off a child for like 5 seconds? Have you? Hey, you're a mother ironing and you ignore, you basically just leave the kid to be for 5 seconds and you take your eyes off them. Next thing, mabotana le pente. Next thing, toilet paper is all over the room. Next thing, a pot has fallen off the stove. Next thing, yeah, they just cause so much havoc because you took your eyes off them. So your discovery of witchcraft is like this, the world taking their eyes off the true nature of what you are. And when they open their eyes again, there is so much chaos in the house that you basically have to do a home makeover, a whole do-over. You have to repaint your walls. You have to call in 10 domestic workers. You have to call in carpet cleaners. That's how much destruction you have caused in the country from simply trusting in this thing that you imagine is anonymous. Your mom has done taken their eyes off you for 5 seconds and you have literally turned the whole house upside down. Somebody gotta put you in a cot that is caged, that you might not come out until you are a grown man that is responsible with society. Lisense South Africa banna baba to baban, so it is a fact. Ka your occult involvement, the secret society you are running, you have run it into the ground, and now you have made women these crazy females. Basa itseng go tlhokomelana. Women have gone literally out of their minds. They're spinning on the spot and because they are to a point of in and of themselves being so apathetic that our entire societies are falling apart. You have taken the nurturing spirit out from them and caused them to become these menaces themselves, these beastly women that are killing other ladies because some other dude killed me. Lilo exposed because even gentle language. Can't nobody speak sense into you. Another why listens and lebata gong nyala. Another why listens and lebata gong convince hore I need to go mina either ngyo twasa or ngyo tshula ndota ye sangoma when I've got this kind of gift that I have. Lebata gong blind. You send me literally witchcraft to blind me from my visions that I might finally capitulate. Are you freaking serious? Galega border. Like, I feel as if though right now RIP is the thing that needs to happen indeed. Because you're resting in peace. No, you're going to hell. Is that basic? Either go there or repent. How under heaven, after all of this exposure that I have brought forward to your doorstep about the involvement in the occult that you are in, are you not even slightly, ever so slightly, briefly enamored with the prospect of redemption? The exposure for how filthy you are. Why is it not lending you unto true redemption? Why let's have a poloso? Mapilona ditila man. Let's to a point where feeling as uneasy as you do over this wickedness that you are involved in. Mindset society. You now want to change people's minds about you. Say that you're not these bunch of rapists walking around all over the show. Well, if you want your reputations to be changed, you need to go to one who can actually transform your heart. You're like constantly giving women meaty juju. Your wife is 24 hours a day drunk. You know what the wives of these men are like? Basari balon. I want to speak English now because I feel like I've been selfish enough at this point against other people. You know what the wives of these men are like? I've already lost people who can't speak my language anyway by now. So I might as well just carry on, keep on whatever languages. I'm only here. I've only garnered for myself a black South African or Botswana or Lesotho crowd. Everybody else can't hear me, but I don't care. Everybody else would not have lingered to this point. Bang my mates. You know what these men are like? They're like patient. What they convert their wives into. They convert their wives into what do you call this? Like patients in a psychiatric hospital that have to be kept sleepy, catatonic, essentially, looking into thin air. Because if they don't keep taking their meds, they might just enter into what they imagine is a psychotic episode where they're going to wreak so much havoc in the mental asylum that nobody can brittle them, that they have to keep on being tranquilized, that they have to take a cocktail of medication every single day to be kept in a bunch. That's what these men have done to you, you Stepford wives. You are robots. Do you understand? And they understand that the moment they stop practicing witchcraft on you to keep you in a bunch, for crying out loud, you're gonna enter into a psychotic spree. And guess what is the tantamount or the equivalent of your psychotic episode? You snapping out of feeling like you're in love with a man. You snapping out of being this docile, subservient, hotelaring woman, this begelazaring woman, this woman that's just riding out like long-suffering, an evil boyfriend or an evil husband. Like basically your mind being restored to you to realize I gotta dump this guy before I marry him. The thing that will make sure that you cancel the wedding even if you have paid for the venue. That's what they're trying to block. And then once you're married to them, the thing that's going to prevent a divorce, the thing that's going to make you realize that no, you want this for a life, what you're gonna go and get, your ambitions, everything that you once used to stand for, you have literally abandoned at the door because you imagine you're in a partnership with somebody with whom you had to compromise certain things just so you can make a marriage work. That is apparently you in a psychotic space. You are in a psychotic trance when you want to follow your dreams, or you want to follow what you think is rational in your mind and safe for you and your children. That is a psychotic episode, according to these freaks. So in order for you to be kept in a bunch, they will feed you a cocktail of drugs from the day you date them, or from a day in the relationship where they realize that you're one of those. And so they start to control you. My ex-boyfriend, you did that to me. We dated for 2 years. Get it okay with him. Before he started to manipulate me with drugs, he felt like he needed to keep me in a comatose, a particular space, in order for me to basically obey what he imagines is the appropriate thing to be as his girlfriend. The only thing that rescued me out of that was Jesus Christ. I got born again out of that relationship. I keep saying that over and over again. If I did not give my life to Christ, if I did not investigate the things of God, if I was not curious about Christianity, at the very end of that relationship, I now today would have been married to my handler. I would have been a Stepford wife of a guy that I would have woken up in a marriage confused as to how under heaven did I marry him, because all throughout the relationship, something like 6 months into the relationship actually, I already wanted to dump him, and yet I married him. I would have ended up there, but he put me in a stray zoot. He put me on a cocktail of meds in a mental institution called his witchcraft, and kept me docile for another 3 years. 3 years yonke. Mina mengifuna ukuhamba kodwa indoda mengiphethe ngimithi cabanga. Some of y'all walked down the aisle to men like these. Because if at all they had stopped doing their witchcraft at any time in the relationship, you would not have married him. You would have cancelled that wedding literally on the day if he had not put a cocktail of drugs in your system so that even on your wedding day, you are under a spell. Unless you speak about things like this, he's not going to listen to just, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, stop with your witchcraft, I know what you did last summer. No. Literally every spell that they have cast, the nature of it, when then it is described to you, on that day, women, maybe you might actually just give your lives to Christ and literally consecrate yourself to a point where you are untouchable because you're MC Hammer. That's what's good. You will finally stop worshipping men and realize because you're going to be unhandleable. A human being cannot be made a puppet on a string indefinitely. Their faculties will eventually kick in. Witchcraft will stop working. It'll stop being effective over time. And when then you want to leave anyway, despite him casting spells to keep you in the relationship, or to bring back lost lover, or never leave me, when you leave anyway, that's when you get a bullet in your skull. That's when they kill you. And that's what happened with my ex-boyfriend. He tried with death curses. They didn't work on me because remember, I'm consecrated to Jesus Christ. That's what's going on. Still trying to kill me to this day. Come into my life or else. Come into my life or else. Guys, how in the world are you going to breathe in a society full of such little idiots of that nature? Men that want to call themselves men, are like puppets on a string. You can't breathe. When you want to go and serve the Lord, when you want to marry a Christian man, they're like, over my dead body. Yeah, oh, indeed, die then. Tell themselves that, like the other day, the Lord showed me a vision of this guy being Beyonce in the movie, in the song Ring the Alarm. Or the guy from America. Ele Beyonce copying ele Ring the Alarm. You know what that song is if you've listened to it in the past. I'm gonna ring the alarm. I've been through this too long, and I'll be damned if I see another chick in your umpa. Yeah. He was like Beyonce in Ring the Alarm. You see her psychosis in that music video. That dude was, instead of it being Beyonce, it was him. On some, I will be damned if I see another man in your arms. Usitshela you're gonna be mine or else. What the heck? A society full of men like those. Ufuni zombie lenjale. He wants someone to control in a marriage. He wants to blind you. Yes, like it, guys. Like, have you seen the movie 50 First Dates yet? Drew Barrymore. The Lord showed me yet another strategy of that nature. You know how Drew Barrymore gets into an accident and loses her long-term memory. Only remembers things from long ago. So everything that happens in the last 24 hours, she forgets it. And then she is played a recording, a tape in the morning to remember everything of this man that he might, when he is now shown her, be familiar to her, and she will be content with him. Yeah, the name of the movie is called 50 First Dates. These men literally want to make out of you a Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates, where they will give you a short-term memory amnesia, and all you will remember is the past, your family, basic things that you do remember as a child growing up. But how in the world you stay in a marriage for 10 whole years with, like, as devil worshiper, you can't understand. Mara, every morning he plays you a tape. Every morning he makes sure that the only thing that you can look into is him. That level of spiritual manipulation of umfazi. Cover on that day, girl, you're a zombie. But busy no, you don't. Because the moment that cocktail of drugs gets out of your system, you will wake up and realize, I'm not interested. I'm trying to get women to not even walk down the aisle. But as for the ones that are already married, Hashem, those are the most bitter. Those are the ones that are not even trying to look at God. They're the ones that wake up too late, and they're also the ones that tend to also end up in body bags. Just like it. In this channel that I found, called African Confessions, one woman is married to a devil worshipper that she was aware, the signs were all there on the day that she married him, but she walked down the aisle anyway. And it took her witnessing him sacrificing a cousin brother of his to realize that she married a monster. And from that, the date when she discovered that she married a monster, it would be another 15 years before she would want out so badly that she would write into African Confessions. She's still in that marriage. She keeps watching her husband sacrifice family members that keep on dropping like flies, and he can't go to their funerals because it's part of the rituals. But that's the wife. Umfazi nje bound to indoda ethwele, and you stay. There is no way a person can be that deeply involved in the occult and you not catch on to it, and people not suspect them. So in order to gaslight the living daylights out of you into basically getting over your suspicion, they gotta put you under a spell too. You gotta, in and of yourself, be unable to go, and also you gotta fear him so much that you're scared to go. But unfortunately, also marry women libona in and of themselves that are very heavy into the occult. So they feel as if though together they're handling each other. They feel as if though together bahona somehow to keep this in a bunch until it gets to a point where everybody is so inebriated, heavy. I have a cousin who is in a marriage where both of them, both of them are deep in the occult. And now this cousin has been told by her particular secret society, the organization that she belongs to, that after all of these years of her doing whatever it is that she's doing, I told you guys about this yesterday, that she now has to sacrifice him and one of their kids, one of their daughters. And she is not stuck in between a rock and a hard place. She doesn't want to. But they're telling her it's either them or her. Kabang, kabang. The only hope that filthy little animal of a cousin has is me. The Lord showed me the rut that she is in. And so therefore, because of my prayers, me standing in the gap for that whole family, only in that stead are they protected. They literally they don't have any in their occult societies. They don't have any hope in each other. They can't go to any sangoma to block the curse from pulling through. The only people that can stand on their behalf, advocating, are true blood-bought Christians and the legions of heaven. God himself saying, no, not this time. Lana angizingeni. The Lord raising up a Christian to pray on their behalf, or in and of himself interceding. That's the only way out. But if the Lord is so fed up with you that he's like, you're handed over, hamba. This is the end. These are the wages of sin. It's death. The husband would inevitably die with the child, or this woman would have to be content with her being the one to basically be sacrificed, that her kid and her child might live. Ukarabo is Karabo is her victim. I am suffering at the hands of her insanity, and yet I am the solution to the rat that she has put herself in. The only solution. She doesn't even know that I have dedicated Umtanake and husband, that the occult that is literally gunning for their blood might hit brick walls the same way they keep hitting brick walls and trying to get to me. They involve themselves in some satanic stuff until it gets too hard. And then next thing abazi ukuthi bayenzeni. What then for abantu ebengena family members athandazayo, or a close proximity to amasonto athandazayo in a community, and so literally the whole village is covered? What then for people who are just naked walking these streets, married to abantu aba-12? Kwenzakalani on that day? These people gotta be stopped. Tshwantse ba stopiwe. And haba stopi when you just rebuke them. They also don't stop when they observe the obvious power of a Christian. It's like a trial by ordeal. Banseditswape bahlaze, and if uhlazo lwabo alubakhozi ukuthi ba repent, kwamele babhode, they gotta die because they're destructive. They are entirely destructive. Now I will go on right ahead, basari tuwe, you hypocrites, to explain to you just what it is that God showed me these guys try to hide. They are doing rituals now so strategically so as to blind me from what they're doing, because they have come to learn that I see. And so for 3 days I was blind, but I knew that it was a sexual perversion that they were bringing forward, and I communicated this. But as soon as that spell was prayed off, I saw exactly what they're doing. And now I'm going to tell you this dream, and it's up to you whether or not you want to believe me, because now all I do is just share what I see until further notice proper. These rodents, these lizards crawling up mabotalona. Let's bring in the fumigators. Don't know why you're not bringing in fumigators. I don't know why you're not giving your life to Christ. Lebona I get why basa pulus. I get why lebona basa bono and people are busting them. More and more people are catching on to them, and the world is getting crazy exhausted with the rubbish they're into. Herein lies the tall tales, the tales of amatota enune. Your husbands, the ones that I dodged, the bullet that I dodged. Here are your men. Here are your younger brothers, your male cousins, your fathers. The thing that they are doing. This is good. My aunt, ne? Oh, as in Katele Minukuluma Kutanzokuluma. My aunt is a prolific devil worshipper na ya Kenya. Ubizi uplomile ko kerekeng wa peri the cloth of isonto. But ever since she was a teenager, nsali busy ka mme waka. There's no one here at home that's innocent of darkness except for 1 or 2 people. If anything, the ones whose hands are clean, kibana, still the kids and karab. Wonke umuntu else ubolile. Well, maybe not everybody else, but literally the grand majority of my family members, they're all involved in the occult in one way or another. So when I call out my aunt, I'm not isolating her as the primary afflictor of the entire family, because she's not. Her son is. However, her son is just mama's, like, he is the worst devil worshipper in the family only because his mother started it. It's a generational curse. So frankly, the mom is to be blamed. And then let's go back even further to history, where our grandparents kwamela blame for the mom being like that. It's just a generational curse that goes back a mile. Do you understand? Now that I have communicated that to you, let's go back to the auntie. This aunt of mine. Her character was severely compromised by her involvement in darkness from a very early age, and she is largely responsible for all the calamity that has fallen on my mother's family. My uncle is also responsible to a certain extent, especially his wife, but there is no single more destructive family in the entire extended family set than the family of my aunt. That's basically what I'm trying to explain to you guys. The most prolific devil worshipper is from her womb that is in this family. Let's just put that out there, all right? So every single time Mangi Pupa about the wicked strategies of many men in my particular life, impilo ya meskarabo individual as a person that I am, they happen from my aunt's house. My aunt's house. So essentially, even the whole demonic strategy against women, especially black women in South Africa, all of those wicked strategies and tactics, because of the fact that, you know, that woman Jezebel, it is written of in the book of Thyatira. Amadoda I am tolerator. Na abanye abafazi, you tolerate that woman Jezebel. So as a result, I'm going to throw you into great tribulation. And that woman in and of herself, I'm going to put her in a sick bed. So God is showing me the root cause of South Africa's ill is wicked women. It is evil women that turned men to darkness. Ngabo Jezebel that made men Ahab. And so everything that is, not everything, but a lot of dark stuff that has happened in my particular life, and that's also happening in the country, the Lord always base camps it at my aunt's house. So a lot of wickedness have I seen from my aunt's house, and it is different versions of my aunt's house. Like, the one time it was a whole mansion where I was living with my biological dad and I couldn't stand him. And that discord that was sown between us, the root cause of it was my aunt. And this mansion was at my aunt's house. My aunt's house is not a mansion. It's just a regular house sitting on a plot, Kosoweto somewhere. In my dream, this was a mansion. Essentially, God was showing me at that get-go that the discord sown in my family to a point where I would have that level of enmity even with my dad was started by my aunt. And also what that aunt stole, the legacy that my father was supposed to build, my biological dad. We were supposed to live a mansion and everything. In that dream, I was, like I said, arguing with my dad. We had a bad vibe between us, and we were living together. My mom was nowhere to be found in this whole ecosystem, in this big house, to a point where I could afford to avoid him from another wing of the house. My dad died a poor man with nothing to his name. And according to the Lord, my aunt started that. So she basically decimated the destiny of my mother when she wreaked havoc in my mother's life. From the moment they were teenagers, she was that jealous sibling. It so afflicted the future that my mother would eventually inherit that it even knocked out my mother's husband, who was my dad. So it was over before it started. He married my dad. My mom married the wrong man in the worst way, but so too did my dad marry the wrong woman, because his own weakness, his own ahabic constitution, his own lackluster unrighteous disposition made him fall subject to the spells of my aunt, to a point where what he was supposed to acquire and do with his family, he lost it all. He lost it all. I'm a daughter that tolerate that woman Jezebel. You don't even know when you marry a woman Uguti, what you're gonna fall into. Never mind tolerating the woman Jezebel, but godlessness. Just never mind the bodlela, because my dad was a drunk, but just not trusting God. You will marry into a family where, even though you're not marrying the culprit's sibling will knock you like a bowling ball, knocking pins to the ground, all of them. Just by that marriage contract entered into between my mother and my father was over before it started because of what my aunt did to my mother years back. My dad was doomed from the get-go in coming together with my mom because of what my aunt had done to my mom. My dad would not have been doomed if he was a godly man, if he was serious about God. He was one of those fluffy, flaccid, lukewarm, professing randos that wasn't really serious with God. And in and of himself, he was a flagrant chauvinist and a misogynist, like the strength of women. So it knocked him out. He became an Ahab. He lost everything. And he has no idea that the root cause of that was my aunt. Right. Now that you understand that, this dream that I had situated at my aunt's house. And again, it was the plot where my aunt lives today, Kosoweto. But it was not the actual house. It was another establishment, God evidencing to me the root causes even of this curse and why it's following me in particular. The problem in the country is rooted in women like my aunt. The reason my aunt is so obsessed with church and has been pretty much all her life in a way that all of her siblings just weren't is because that's just what witches do. When they are so deeply involved in dark magic that they would be a scorn to society, they then suture themselves to the church. They join churches so as to veil. They use the church as a smoke screen to cover their evil. Do you understand what I'm saying? So her obsession with church in a way that the rest of the family isn't is to veil her devil worship. It is no wonder she gave birth to the most satanic man in the whole family. Her son is a menace to this whole family. He has attempted to sacrifice certain members of the family even, but failed, hit a brick wall because of me. To this day, he can't stand me because I'm standing in the way of his prosperity in his spells. And so he has tried to marry me off to some guy to handle me. He has been made that evil thing because his mom gave birth to him. He's the baton. He's the proliferator. He's the thing that moves this stuff into the next generation. You cannot be such a sorceress and expect not to give birth to kids that are going to follow after you. The soul that sins shall die indeed. If they gave their lives to Christ, they would not have to be like their mom, but it is over before it starts for the children of a witch, especially if this witch was busy practicing when she was heavily pregnant. My aunt, like I told you, was busy with my mother, well, one of her victims, since they were teenagers. So all of her pregnancies, she was practicing witchcraft, meaning that all of her kids were literally conceived, never mind in sin, because all of us are conceived in sin, but in a cult trajectory. They were just conceived in that generational curse. So inevitably, all of them would do this. Inevitably. My mom would only turn to the darkness long after both my older sister and I were born. So that's what rescued me in particular. Basically the curse. Guys, yazi. This insanity going on la emgaqweni, it must be comprehended ukuthi it has root causes, and the ramifications or the consequences of it are well into the future. There's even this one dude that I went to primary school with, not the same high school, but then we reconciled in university. Had a massive crush on him in primary school. Turns out it was mutual. High school tried to get with me, but didn't really work out because we went to separate schools. Tried to reconcile again, like I said, in university. Something separated us. This dude, later on, when life now, I had completely moved on even from the feelings, the big crush I had on him. I then became friends with him. We became a crew again with him all together. But this time around, I was dating my ex-boyfriend. So I was reintroduced to him by my ex-boyfriend. So it's like he wasted all of those years. All of those years, did not pursue me, did not do what needed to be done, knew that he liked me, wasted time, wasted the opportunity in high school. Okay, fine. So primary school, we were too young. High school, he could have just like stretched himself out of like his bones to find me. Didn't. Given an opportunity at varsity, when we first Yokovitz, we found each other. Stumbled around all over the show, kept on bumping into each other at clubs and whatnot. Even after he dropped out of Wits, we kept bumping into each other for years. It's like shots were given. Shots were given so many times for this guy to be like, it's about time we spoke. It's about time we spoke. Did not do anything until next time I saw him again. I was his friend's. He became friends with my ex-boyfriend. He was actually friends with my ex-boyfriend's brother, late brother who passed away, who was younger than my ex-boyfriend. My ex-boyfriend's brother was a younger brother than my ex. And so it makes sense that this guy that was my exact age would then be friends with the younger brother of my ex, because remember, we went to primary school together. We were in the exact same class, but my ex was older than me by 4 years. So he was not so much the friend of my ex-boyfriend, but the friend of my ex's brother. And when the brother passed away, everybody just became one big fat happy family. So he continued to be in our lives. And the bitterness it caused him to see me with my ex was out of this world. And when I found out the depth of the feelings that he had for me, all I could think in my mind was, dude, but you had all that time. The feelings were mutual and you knew it. We had chemistry from freaking primary school, for crying out loud. And you could have, now that we were old enough at varsity, been like, Karabo, like, let's do this. You could have done that. Instead, you wasted time until one day I rocked up in the arm of another guy that was too close. If at all me and that guy broke up, I could then maybe finally end up with you. It was friendship. He was like a friend. He was a friend of my ex-boyfriend, so there was no way that we could now be together. So it basically shattered any prospect of us being together. Him seeing me with my ex-boyfriend caused him to put so much witchcraft on me, on our relationship, out of bitterness, sitting in a corner somewhere broken, that his first love is with somebody else. He then cast a whole bunch of spells to make sure that I never go anywhere in life, that everything will be regressed. Also trying to break us up with my ex, and to this day he's still very busy. So it never would have worked out. Unless, of course, I would have been influential enough to him when I gave my life over to God to be like, babe, together let's turn to Jesus. But I tried to do that with my ex-boyfriend. It didn't work. So it turns out that when you get saved as a woman, just flee. Get out of the relationship that you're with a guy, because he's never going to give his life over to God. Or at least highly unlikely. Anyway, whatever. And this is like the case for Christ with that show. With that married couple, that couple that turned to Jesus Christ, the guy who wrote the book, Case for Jesus, for Christ. The wife got saved first, but it's very rare where the wife will lead a man to God. Usually it's the guy that tends to lead the woman to God. But yeah, if you get born again as a woman that is in a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, flee, get out. You are highly unlikely going to rescue this guy for Jesus. Anyway, whatever. This dude's witchcraft, this primary school first love, all of his sorcery, even though he lived somewhere else and I lived somewhere else, was located at my aunt's property. The dream was snakes, a whole bunch of snakes just outside of my aunt's house. And this guy was trying to drag me backwards to swim in the snakes and stay there in the back. And I fought, I resisted until he left me alone. And I now had to find my way through and out of these snakes. And this whole dream happened. And this guy was with another dude. So I don't know whether that represented a ritual that was being done with another person or whatever. But the two of them walked into the sunset. He gave up on trying to regress me because I fought, right? I fought until I had to now wrestle myself out of the snakes without him pushing me down. And it happened all outside of my aunt's house. A lot of the dreams of wickedness that came into my life at my aunt's house or just outside my aunt's house, God showing me even the delay by a guy that you could have had a very big romance with happened because of your aunt. Like just the fact that you were a seed in your mother's womb, your prospects for love, romance, and marriage were thwarted all the way back then by your aunt, just by her coming at your mom. Just by her coming at your mom. That dude, the reason why he delayed and did not shella where he was supposed to shella despite a sparkle in the eye all the way in primary school, to a point of wasting so much time with you that you would eventually end up being the girlfriend of one of his friends. That was your aunt. What the heck? I was like, really? I don't really miss that I never ended up with that guy. I don't think he's not the one who got away. I'm the one who got away to him. But my feelings were very strong for that guy, and he was the first dude that I ever loved, if you want to say that. Nothing ever happened between us. We just flirted. There was obvious chemistry, but nothing ever happened. I would have ended up with him, likely, if it wasn't for my aunt. Like there are root causes to everything. So now that you understand that, allow me to then continue with this dream to help you understand that all the eventualities that are slapping, never mind my life, but lives of women like me, have a root cause originating in some Jezebel woman that is so destructive to other women in the town, in the city, that they cost them love. They cost them genuine relationships. They cost them affection, and they also cost men their morality, precisely because of loss of love from the women that they were supposed to be with, the right pairings. And this then in the future produces, guys, it is so destructive. It then produces so much calamity and chaos in families on the ground that there is no longer any cooperation between men and women. And the root cause of it is women like my aunt. Like, her eternity is going to be fiery. Does not repent. And what's worse is that she is tolerated, accommodated by everybody, including my mom. I've told my mom, has done some this and that, and she ignored me. That is tolerating that woman Jezebel. You understand what I'm saying? Now, that Jezebel has destroyed my prospects for romance. My older sister, my younger sister is also struggling with boyfriends. Like, guys, it's bad. It is horrible. Love in my mother's household, apart from intervention by Jesus Christ, will always result in a horrible, sneaky little gangster boy being with a woman that is entirely out of his league. My dad was out of my mom's league. And in and of himself, he was decimated further by entering into a marriage contract with a woman that was cursed by another woman. My older sister, over before it started. It was over before it started for me. How it is that I ended up with a substandard guy, frankly, in comparison to the one that I was supposed to be with, was that curse. The guy that my ex-boyfriend was allowable. He was okay for me to be with because he was already so compromised and derelict. Women in my family had to be with men that, because of this curse by my aunt, that are weak in comparison to them. And so it would cause a lot of insecurity and passive aggression in a man, ultimately in a marriage or relationship, to a point where he starts to abuse the woman. Yeah, because of how small he feels in comparison to her. So inappropriately sized men for a certain chunk of a woman. A woman that should be with a much bigger man, a much more manly man, ends up with like a little bit of a pipsqueak, an Oedipal complex. And this is an issue apparently in South Africa. And that is what has caused gender-based violence in the nation. In other words, it has caused a whole bunch of men in South Africa to figure that they need to clump together in a secret society of a nefarious nature, like a demonic society, to control women, since they can't control them physically, naturally, in a way that you can talk sense into a woman. They realize that they can't, because they have been made to enter into relationships with women that are so big in comparison to them in the past that they have felt small, and imagine that the way to reduce the size of these women is through spiritual means. So they literally started a whole secret society premised around creating a stronger patriarchy while creating Stepford women out of South African females, where they will just be these robots that are made small from the very get-go of my life, destined, if at all I didn't give my life to Jesus, to end up with a man that is tiny. Because according to my aunt, my mom was never going to marry right. And so she had to marry a guy that would be frustrated by the girth of my mom until there is either a divorce, violence, something in the relationship that's going to cause it to separate. So any man that I looked at that would have been right for me, any man that I looked at that would have been fit for me, big for me, the kind of man with whom I could have gone into the sunset. This dude from my primary school, the one that was in the same grade as me, etc. I was older than him by a couple of months. He was a September baby. His birthday is this month, actually. And I was born in August, so he was younger than me by a month. We were born in the same year. However, despite that, let me just move to the next part. My ex-boyfriend, however, was 4 years older than me. So he was chronologically older than me. Biologically and chronologically, he was older than me. But this guy from my primary school was bigger than my ex, mentally and psychologically. How he thought, he would have just been better. First of all, okay, so in primary school, that was then, he was like tiny, year than me. You know how girls growth spurt? exceeds that of boys. So by the time I got out of primary school, I was taller than him. And it was like, whatever, anyway, good riddance, you're a little short in bottle anyway. But then he sprung out. He like just stretched out. By the time I saw him again in university, he was towering above me. He was a tall guy. So physically, his physical stature was larger than that of my cousins. And all throughout my life, I've been, not my cousins, sorry, who is this? My ex-boyfriend. All throughout my life, I've been complaining. I dated short guys. Like, it was inevitable. Like, I was supposed to do this because I came from a lineage or a genealogy of a woman that was cursed by another to end up with squeak men. So my mom's curse would inevitably follow me. So even though I would have much rather been with a size appropriate men, physically, biologically, and in all other regards, I just couldn't. I'm a very intelligent woman and I've been that way pretty much all my life. It's natural, this giftedness that is inside me. So I needed to be with a guy that would be first and foremost physically appropriate to be next to me. And given that I am a tall woman living in a country full of short guys, it was really hard to come by. And I'm very smart. So at least then, if you're not going to be my height, you better be my intellectual equal, for crying out loud. I ended up compromising on that because I realized that guys were just rare, hard to come by, that had that combination. So I have dated some pretty short guys in my life, like really short, like so short that literally I'm looking at you like down there, okay? Problem number one. And I let that be a thing. It was like a curse grooving into me that I would inevitably be just like my mom. And then in terms of my intellectual equal, I have never in my life, not even once, perhaps maybe one guy, my first love physically, in other words, the one that I actually did date, he was smart. All the guys that I've dated, everybody else, guys, like average or below average. Like one time, this one boyfriend that I was dating in high school, I was like 17, he was like 21, and this dude, I once told him, he asked me, so in my school, so I'm in high school, he's out of high school, and he was like, so is your school a girls' school only, or is it mixed with boys? And my answer to him was, it's co-ed. And he looked at me and said, what the heck is that? And I was like, oh goodness, I'm sorry that you don't know what co-ed is, but it's both girls and boys. And then one time I told him that I need to leave the jazz festival because I gotta go study for science. I'm writing biology because I have to go and study for a biology exam. And he was like, you're lying, you don't do biology. And I was like, dude, I do math, science, biology, accounting, and then English and Afrikaans. He was like, no way. He could not believe that I was smart. Just for the life of him. There was a time years prior to me meeting him when he was still a teenager, a story that was shared among everybody, where apparently there was a show in this country called Jam Alley, right? There was a young kids, like a teenage show. Goodness, I'm not even gonna go and describe it to you. If you're not from South Africa, you don't have to, but it was not a kiddies show, but it was like a music show that attracted teenagers, okay? And this guy was interviewed on Jam Alley, by one of the presenters there. It was not on the actual show Jam Alley, but Jam Alley did an interview of kids on the street just as a snippet, a part of the show. And he was like found at like the mall or whatever as a teenage boy, and they interviewed him and they asked him, so what do you think about ABC, about the country, about what do you think about did he say South Africa or Johannesburg? And his answer was, Johannesburg is a beautiful country. He said Johannesburg is a beautiful country. Everybody laughed at him, including the host, and that joke reached me because they told me years later on some, your boyfriend once upon a time was interviewed on Jam Alley, and when they asked him about Johannesburg, he said Johannesburg was a beautiful country. Johannesburg is a city, for those of you who don't understand. And at the time I laughed at it, but all of these things, just like for me, it was like, I am like a whole maths and science student at school, and I'm dating a dude who doesn't know what co-ed is, a dude that can't even believe that I'm doing these subjects. And once upon a time he was asked about the city that we live in that is beautiful, that is Johannesburg, and he went on right ahead and called it a country. Those were the men that I dated. I had to dumb myself down. I could not talk about school with them or my mindset concerning life matters at all. The ex that I dated, the last dude that I was with, he was not necessarily Johannesburg is a beautiful country. He was slightly above average, but he was definitely not on my level. He was definitely not on my level at all, right? So I settled. That's what I'm trying to explain to you guys. And in terms of his height, I was sick and tired of dating dudes that I looked at down below. So that dude was my height exactly, only slightly taller than me. The guy that I dated for 5 years. So for me, that was like the best thing that I ever had. Therefore, me not ending up with that dude from primary school was a curse. All the dudes that was appropriate for me, the dude from primary, well, he towered above me. From primary school. From primary, he was a boffin just like me. He belonged to the clever, kid's classroom. He was the maths kid. He was the Wits entrant. He was when I was at Wits when I first bumped into him. So he made it into the university. He studied law there, but then he dropped out for whatever reason to go and pursue whatever. But what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that he was smart. He was smarter even than me in primary school. He did better at maths and at English. The last grade of primary school that we were in the same class, and he used to slay everybody in that class, including me. He was among the top kids at school. So basically, it's like I met what would have been my husband in primary school, but all of the opportunities for us to come together were like just discombobulated, confounded along the way. I don't know what he's doing today, but that was the first experience of a curse operating from the time when I was a child. The first experience of a curse operating from when I was a kid. That was what in the world under heaven was going on. And then finally, when I happened upon him again, like I said, we couldn't be together because I'm with his boy. And never ever, even if his boy and I broke up, he's like, we just don't date friends. We don't play musical chairs between friends, so it'll never happen. So it shattered any prospect of us being together, even though we met first. That was my aunt. That was my aunt. Like, you must understand. Like, stuff like that. From what the Lord showed me, that guy eventually responded to a call, Yobu Zangoma. Why would he respond to a call, Yobu Sangoma? We were similarly gifted. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are not with repentance, are without repentance. So the prophetic gifting that I have got, he has it too. I turned to Christ at 26 and a half. He did not. So he chose the darkness, because the darkness will always pursue people with spiritual gifts and usurp them to use them for the kingdom of darkness. So if I had ended up with that dude, both of us would at some point happened upon this gift that we have in us. I chose Christ. I don't know what would have happened if we were together. I might have been able to, I guess, pull him out of the prospect of Uktwasa because of conviction or whatever. Who knows what my influence would have been in his life and vice versa. So he would have used his prophetic gifting for the kingdom of heaven instead of for the devil. Instead, when did he twasa? From what the Lord showed me, after I got saved, we were the same age, right? I was older than him by like a month. When I was 26 and a half, that's when I gave my life over to the Lord. I don't know when he started dabbling in the darkness, but he is deep in the occult today, because he is like a whole functioning, operating sangoma. I am being attacked, harassed like no man's business today by that very same call, where they're telling me, Garabu, you must work for the kingdom of darkness, because obviously you're ignoring your ancestors. So he got pulled, Kadiwashing, into the kingdom of darkness because he got basted by his own spiritual gifting that eventually made him twasa. But my spiritual gifting is making me do this. So long story short, if I had ended up with that guy, the two of us would be prophesying in the name of Christ. He's working for Satani and I'm working for God. What happened to him? He's been made an Ahab. He tolerates a woman Jezebel, a man that is supposed to be walking in his fullness, but does not have the appropriate helper suitable. About 5 days, not days, like, maybe days, 6, maybe a week ago, I had a dream of this guy coming to me in some shrouded darkness and telling me I would have married you. Like a little child on some neener. I'm like, dude, you're the one that did not pursue me. You're the one that watched me walk away at the end of primary school. You're the one that could have accessed me in high school but chose not to because you had a friend that had access to me. That was one of my closest girls. That was a tomboy that was always hanging out with the boys. And you were always on the phone with her. And you asked about me, she told you what's going on, and you still tarried. Then in not in high school, sorry, but in university, you had an opportunity to chat with me. We were on the same university campus for a whole year. You kept on bumping into me at clubs, go Melville, go partying, go cool runnings. You kept bumping into me, and the two of us would stare at each other and giggle and laugh. And every single time, you were fumbling around, drawing circles on the floor, and you did nothing until, fast forward some more years down the line, I'm now dating your boy. Proper, it's on you. So for you to come at me and then tell me, Uguti, you would have married me, it's like, shut up, like, season does it stop. Of course you're gonna feel some kind of way when the woman, the first girl that you ever loved ever since you were a little baby boy is dating your friend, and now you see what a great girl she's become. Go busy gloating all up in my girl telling me I would have married you. Well, you didn't. You capitulated to a curse because due to the fact that you continued to tolerate that woman Jezebel. When I was dating my ex-boyfriend, the stories that he would tell me about the kinds of women that this guy was dating, because I couldn't my ex, I was like, really? Do you know how hot this boy was when we were in primary school? He was what, like, well, this friend of mine had a crush on him. This friend of mine, that. How in the world is he dating random older women, first and foremost? He was into dating older women, and I was like, how is this guy settling so badly when he was so sought after by some of the most gorgeous girls in my primary school. Well, of course he was like that also in varsity. When I saw him on campus, my friend was still spazzing over him. I was like, yo, okay, mtate. Except he was interested in me and not my friend. Type establishment thing. Yeah, he was the kind of guy that people spaz over. There was a time I bumped into him at a restaurant. We bumped into him at a restaurant where I was having dinner with my girls, and I hugged him. We spoke, we chatted since, we've known each other since the good old-fashioned primary school days. And after having a conversation with him, I got flooded by these females on some who's your friend, who's your friend, who's your friend. I got jealous because I had a crush on him first. But anyway, I was with my ex-boyfriend at that time, but all my girls were like, who's your friend? And I was like, they were all like, who's your friend? Because he was that fly. So why you're dating these finished off keshafied older women? I don't get it. So he went and I believe made a baby with some woman that looked like 20,000 years older than him, and that for me was like, yo dude, what a waste of all those genes type thing. That is a trajectory that went all the opposite direction. Long story short, he was under a curse and so was I. So when he came to me in that dream telling me I would have married you, I'm like, no, you wouldn't have, because this is what God would have done, and this is exactly what Jesus has done, and it could never have been any different. Plus, you chose Usatane in a way that I'm very turned off by him, so nah, this thing was never supposed to work out, because if at all when you were strong spiritually, you would have resisted the devil and fled from him and into my particular arms. So don't be out here gloating over the fact that my ex-boyfriend wasted time with me and did not propose marriage to a woman he was with for 5 years that you imagined was phenomenal, because you wasted, never mind 5 years, bugger, but like what, 10, 15 years? You wasted primary school all the way to university and a couple of years thereafter, and you be telling my ex-boyfriend that since 5 years asa proposing really? You literally wasted more time than my ex, but you rocking up on some, if you had dated me, I would have married you. No, dude. You would never have dated me. Why? Because you spun around on the spot. But that was a curse. That was a curse. So I was inevitably supposed to end up with a bit of my ex-boyfriend. That's all that the providential outworking of witchcraft prior to me turning to Jesus would allow me to end up with. It pushed away the guy that claims he would have proposed marriage to me within like 2 seconds if at all we were dating. It made sure that we can't be together. A guy that was appropriate for me in terms of height, how he looked, how he thought, his mind, and also his spiritual gifting. We were on the same level. The exact same thing. The guy that would have been a husband easily into the future that I could have easily also submitted under is busy telling me in some dreams that I would have married you. Because both you and I were operating under a curse from the time we were kids to a point where this curse that was operating, where I was under the umbrella of my wicked aunt, whereas he was under the umbrella of just whatever must be the wickedness in the country, was saying, you will keep dilly-dallying and dancing around each other, but the providential outworking of sorcery will make sure that you never come together. And lo and behold, we didn't end up together. So what happens then when the right pairing does not end up together? In my particular case, the man that could have been my husband ended up lambasting the relationship that he observed with the guy that I was with at the time. He became a little sangoma against me and my ex-boyfriend. And my ex and I obviously inevitably could not stay together or be strong together because he was too small for me. He was too small for me. He was negligible for a woman of my girth, and so he ended up inevitably insecure. He ended up inevitably passive-aggressive. He ended up inevitably low-key abusive, and also imagining that since I'm so big, he's got to manage me, kaditar. Used sorcery to keep me small. Until who rescued me? Jesus. That is a curse on a country. When you make sure that women don't come together with the men that make sense for them, you cause either men that are too grand, like this guy, that in primary, let me just save this first. When you're operating under a curse, you make, let me say this way, you make women that are too big for a particular guy end up married to a pipsqueak, Oedipus complex, becomes the marriage between men and women. Or you get a man that is so lofty with some little woman that does not make sense for him, is not the appropriate helper suitable for him, that the guy ends up in Jefela aimless in life. The Lord made Eve for Adam, right? That she might be a helper suitable for him and help him along. So if your Eve is not able to help you because she's not on par with what you're supposed to do, she doesn't see your vision, neither is the wind beneath those particular wings sufficiently, a man will be aimless. He will just be in a relationship, in a marriage, to merely just procreate, like have sex and have babies, and that's all that he's doing, but actually fulfill a purpose. That can never happen. If a pastor, for instance, does not have the appropriately godly wife, he is going to struggle as a servant of God. He is going to struggle utterly if he does not have the kind of wife that can indeed be the helper suitable to a man of that nature. So a man that is going to be serving God needs a very godly wife. A wife that also understands what it means to be the wife of a preacher, that demands of such a job as that, a calling as that from God. If you don't have the right spouse by your side as a man, it's written in God's word that a worthless woman or an evil woman is like rottenness in the bones of a man. We are Moshe, but a good one is like a crown of glory on his head. The right choice for a wife can literally make or break a man in the future. The Bible says that the Proverbs 31 woman, it is written of her in the scriptures that her husband's confidence is full in her, and he lacks nothing. He is praised at the city gates because of the kind of girl that he's got by his side. Gifted woman or godly woman builds her house, but an evil one tears it down with her own hands. And the scriptures are littered all over the show, especially in the Proverbs, counseling men to avoid a certain kind of woman, because there's a certain kind of woman that her feet go down to death. They go down to Sheol. No man returns from her. Avoid her, my son, my son. The scriptures make it clear. Also, he who finds a wife finds what? A good thing, and obtains favor from the Lord. So finding a wife is an important feat for a man. And so for him to use nothing but charm and beauty to find a woman is to shoot himself in the foot. When you're going to run with nothing but the fact that a woman is beautiful or charming, you're screwed as a man. Top of that, an evil woman can derail the purpose or the trajectory altogether to a point where he might have been a really great guy once, but now he's nasty. Like what happened with Ahab, with Jezebel, where it is that the dude even felt guilty concerning Naboth's vineyard. However, later on, he just was this like wuss that nobody could trust. Jezebel was essentially running the show, while her man was just like this wimpy wuss behind her. The perfect pairing, for instance, in a godly couple is, I like to use this example a lot. There is this channel on YouTube called Torch for Christ Ministries. It is this guy from the US married to this woman from South America. I stand corrected as to where she is. I think Brazil. The woman is godly, the guy is godly, and she can speak Portuguese, while this dude is an American, so he can only speak English. When he is evangelizing or street preaching or trying to bring people to Jesus, whatever, in the streets of Brazil or a country, a Latin American country or a country that speaks Portuguese or one of the languages that this woman understands, she interprets behind him as he's speaking in English, and she walks behind him. It's just so beautiful, and they wear sackcloth like in the city square or whatever. However, in a city where he is speaking English, she is just quiet following him around. She is a helper suitable. She is literally fulfilling God's purpose for a woman in the life of a man that is to serve in ministry. So that kind of a helper suitable is entirely perfect for a man. Another couple that I can use on YouTube, unfortunately the wife passed away, but it's Hannes and Hannes Ministries, where the wife was such a beautiful helper suitable to her husband. She unfortunately is now late. She passed away, so now he's like running solo type thing. But that kind of helper suitable pairing, and they've been doing it like the Torch for Christ Ministries couple is young. The Hannes and Hannes were an older couple, like a mama and a dada, old with like grown kids that are in and of themselves getting married and what have you. And however, they had been married since they were kids, and this woman had been a helper suitable to him, and it just showed the power of God in a good wife. Do you understand what I'm saying? It showed the power of God in the life of a man that has embraced his calling, and this woman is enabling him along. So the right woman is a perfect plug-in for a man. It is an explosive equation. So if you want to come against the country, you must then separate couples from the moment they meet, even in primary school. You must make sure that kids don't even look at each other anymore when they crush on each other from primary school, because it's like their spirits recognize each other as, you are the very potential for my future wife. Right? You are the orchestration of such romances as those from youth. God's thing. But when a curse is in operation, it'll just go awry. The dude will go their left, the woman will go their right. And in the extremities that they are from each other, they will then draw to themselves that which will destroy both parties. So what destroys a woman that is to be the helper suitable of an Adam, right? What destroys Eve? Her ending up with Steve instead of Adam. What destroys Adam? Him ending up with Evelyn instead of Eve. And that's exactly what happened with this Oki. When I was dating my ex-boyfriend, I was with Steve as Eve. And as Adam, he was with Evelyn. And his Evelyn was like this butch, gorgonic thing. He was always just with these older women. And why such a hot boy with so much going for himself is doing with these older women. And my ex always used to tease him for that. They always used to tease him, despite being this like a total typical alpha male. He was busy with not little, but these weird women that were way they were way who was like, they were not in his league. They were not in his league at all. Now he was settling, and he ultimately put a baby in one of these Evelyns. And my ex-boyfriend was about to put a baby in me as Eve. He ended up being not Adam but Steve. Like him being like, I don't know, Adamson instead of Adam. I nearly married the equivalent of what that guy himself ended up compromising with. So if you want to destroy the fabric of society, tear away at the fiber of unions that make perfect sense in the sight. So this random Gorgon Adam of mine, the Adam that went awry, is busy teasing me today on some, he didn't deserve you. He wasted your time. Look how much he has cursed you well into the future. And on top of that, I would have married you if you had ended up with me. Dude, you didn't even ask me out. Well, since 15 years, yeah, now since 5. So you don't get to come. If anything, you failed more abysmally than him because you were given a whole 15 years. The Lord gave you primary school, wagnigeza a portion of high school, wagnigeza first day, freshman's year at Wits University. Wasinga those opportunities. Wagnigeza Melville nightclub scene, wagnigeza taboo nightclub scene, wagnigeza all of those. And then next thing, when she was in corporate South Africa finally, you see her again, but whoops, guess what? She's dating your friend. You are the one that wasted 15 years. However, my ex only wasted 5. So you don't get to say, like, speak nonsense. What did that? It was the coming in between Adam from the time they are still kids growing up under their mother's households, so that they will end up in completely different trajectories, and then society altogether falls apart, where men are with women that don't make sense and women are with men that don't make sense. And then when you are dealing, let's now narrow it down to women with men who don't make sense. When you are dealing with a woman of my girth with a little bit of a pipsqueak that doesn't make sense, we're not gender-based violence all up in your grill. We've got passive aggression, like I said earlier. We have got spiritual manipulation. We've got a guy that just feels like this woman is too butch and strong for me, for crying out loud. So what I'm gonna do is brittle her. I'm gonna subdue her. Guys, I've always been an academic, and I've always been very much about ambition, pushing, driving an agenda along. Ex-boyfriend, I could not get him to do anything. I could not get him to go to school. I couldn't get him to do jack. The other dude was self-motivated. He might have dropped out of university, but he ultimately went and conquered the world to do his own thing, because he was always a man focused and resolved in what he wanted to do. I would not have struggled to get that guy to move his body like pushing a log along up a mountain or a hill. I wouldn't have struggled. That guy from primary school. But I struggled with my ex. That's what the devil is trying to do. Make women be in relationships that are like a sandbag that you are just carrying through. Babe, why don't you do this? Babe, why don't you try that? You're growing, you're thriving, you are graduating, you're doing all of these things, and this dude is like snail paste. My ex-boyfriend, when we started out in a relationship, he was earning more than me. Within a year or two, I was earning more than him, and he just did not wait again. It was like a baby that you have to keep on putting diapers on, even though Seganatre, it's like, come on, when are you gonna get potty trained? When are you gonna get it was so exhausting. It was so exhausting, but guess what? His mom loved me. Why? Because I was pushing someone that in and of herself she was failing to push. When I met him, he didn't even have a driver's license. He couldn't drive. Guys, yes, and it was bad. It was really bad. I was an Eve who had lost an Adam because in the process somewhere it just fell apart. And now I was with Steve and it didn't make sense, but I was trying to make it work. Neke Foster, and indeed the ultimate end result of you trying to push a man that's unpushable because you're too big for him is spiritual manipulation. He's going to want to shut you up. He's going to want to brittle you. He's going to want to finally handle you. He's going to want to just get you to calm down and not be so heavy anymore. Oskato by this chunk beef machine of a woman anymore. And so he's going to make out of you a Stepford wife. He's going to put you in a mental asylum and put a stray suit on you, feed you a cocktail of medication that you might be kept in a bunch. That's what happened to me until I cried out to Jesus at 26, the perfect time. Cried out to Christ at 26, and he rescued me out of marrying Adamson or Steve instead of Adam. And the Adam that went on right ahead and passed up on his Eve is now today literally mocking the living daylights out of me, saying, I would have married you. No, you wouldn't have. You took 15 years that chill. You didn't choose Jesus. Chill. You are the one that made a decision. The relationship that you could have entirely avoided even happening if you had just shut out on time. You had first year Wits. Oh no, sing it then. Hey. Because if you had dated Mika first year Wits, I wouldn't have even dated some of the little animals that I dated from university all the way into corporate South Africa, including your ex-boyfriend that thing. You would have introduced me to him and not him be like, hey, this is my friend. Let's say his name was Zuzu. This is my friend Zuzu. And I'd be like, no, don't worry, I know Zuzu from primary school. That wouldn't have happened. That would not have happened. You would have been the one to rather introduce me to my ex, because that would have been one of your friends. Instead, busy, now I would have married you. No, you wouldn't have, because you didn't shut out in first year. Just like it.